South, Ms. Nana Mahomola, the CEO and the entire delegation. And then I also want to welcome the newly constituted board of Sanpi. But you appeared last week, you are no longer new, led by the chairperson and the CEO and the entire board members that are present. Also to welcome the senior management and the staff from both the ministry that are in our midst. We need to start with the business of the day. The agenda, I suppose you have seen it floated there earlier. The agenda, we'll start with the briefing by the South African Weather Service on the annual report and the financial statements. Then we're going to discuss that. Then we are going to allow the South African National Biodiversity Institute to do the same. What one would like to deal with, we know that there might not be significant changes with what you presented on your fourth quarter report, unless there are matters that you felt you didn't deal with on the fourth quarter report. Those are the matters that you can deal with as and when you make your presentations. But I would like us to focus on the audit outcome, including your post-audit action plan, with the view that the members have read the annual reports. But you can highlight those issues and then the members will interrogate with those issues as and when we deal with the questions and answer sessions. I'm doing that because, especially for Sunday, I know you appeared last week. Most of the information remained the same because the only issue then we presented the fourth quarter financial, that's the difference. So to save time, I think let's do that so that we can have more time to interact with the presentations. The members must give the members ample time to present. But if there are issues that you feel you need to highlight in the annual report, do so as and when you present. But if I realize you're taking a lot of time, I'll have to stop you. Then, having said that, I should think I need to just make some few comments with regard to the South African Weather Services. I think we need to commend you for your improved performance against the set targets that you had. Because you recall in 2019-20, you performed 14 out of 21, that was 66. And then 2019, you performed 14 out of 20, that was 70%. And then now in the 14-20, in the 2021 financial year, that's where you are now, 70%. I think then the issue that one is concerned about, it's only that you need to improve on your audit outcomes instead of maintaining an unqualified audit opinion that is stagnant in all successive years. Because your issue that we have seen, we think it's a challenge. It's not good to have findings on compliance with a legislation for successive years. Because then to us, it means that the audit action plan was not fully implemented. As you are saying, we have got keen interest on that now. So our expectation as a committee, we're going to expect you to include information on the consequence management to deal with the non-compliance with legislation and the supply chain management processes. But I should think it's worth it to uphold you that your revenue as an entity is also recovering after the resumption of flights in the country and in Africa in general. Having said that, let me hand over to you, Chairperson, the South African Weather Service to introduce the reports, and then you decide to hand over to whoever needs to make the presentation. Over to you, Chairperson.
Chairperson, my network is a bit shaky, and I hope I'll be able to, finish without disturbance. But thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable Faith Matambi and members of the Portfolio Committee. And I'd like to acknowledge our Minister, who I believe will be checking in, Honorable Barbara Creasy, and acknowledging also our Deputy Minister, Makotso Sochu, and the DG, Nomfundo Chabalala, and colleagues at the department, acknowledging also my colleague, new chairperson of Sanbi, Vera Ferguson, and of course the team at the South African Weather Services. Chairperson and members, thank you again for the opportunity to present our 2021 annual report. And Chair, I note the statement you made about us needing to improve on our unqualified, go beyond just being unqualified. I have in attendance with me the CEO, Mr. Isham Abader, the CFO, Mr. Norman Zizi, Executive Weather and Climate, Dr. Jonas Mpepe, and Acting Executive Corporate Services, Ms. Zoleka Makongolo, and Senior Manager Strategy and Support, Mr. Dituso Mohapi. Members and the Chair, this is this current board's last appearance at the Portfolio Committee. Our term of office expires at the end of the year. On behalf of the board, I would like to take this opportunity to really appreciate the great working relationship that we have had with this Portfolio Committee. We appreciated your oversight role, your guidance, and your support. Chair, I would like to confirm again that the majority of our employees continue to work from home in line with the COVID protocols. We cannot be too careful. Sufficient support is provided for them to ensure that they remain resilient and engaged. Yes, we are proud to present our report. In spite of what you said, Chair, we are still riding the crest of having an unqualified audit again. The change in the landscape due to COVID-19 has resulted in risks to many of our business operations. We've lost time due to lockdown, and of course the intermittent power failures have impacted severely on the performance of some of our units, just like it has happened with other organizations. We have achieved most of our targets. Can I continue? CEO will elaborate on the areas of partial and non-achievements. Chair and members, once again, our biggest challenge as South African Weather Services is revenue generation. The impact of lockdown has hit one of our biggest source of revenue, the aviation industry. We are, however, hopeful that this is going to change soon because travel has started and we're seeing more and more flights coming into South Africa. Chair, I'd like to immediately hand over to the CEO and the CFO, Norman Zizi, to take us through the 2020-2021 annual report. I thank you for your indulgence. CEO, we're in your hands.
Thank you very much, Chair. Am I audible?
If you can go a bit up
that better, Chair?
To go up where you are sitting, you pull your camera closer to you. There you go.
Okay.
That's better. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, Chair. Good evening, honorable members. Good evening. I'm not sure if the minister's joined yet. Good evening, Minister, Deputy Minister, the Chair of our board, the SANBI board, the DG and our colleagues. Good evening to everybody. Chair, in line with your instruction, I'm not going to go in detail through a lot of the slides, especially the introductory slides. So I'll skip some of them on the assumption, as you indicated, that the members have read them. So I'm going to request, Chair, that we go immediately to slide number 5, please. Chair, this slide gives an overall summary of the 2020-21 performance of the entity. You will see there under Program 1, we had 4 targets, of which 4 were achieved. Under Program 2, we had 3 targets, and there also we achieved all 3 targets. Under Program 3, which is our infrastructure and information systems, we had 7 targets, of which we achieved 4 and 3 were partially achieved. Under Program 4, which is administration, we had 6 targets. We achieved 3 of them. 1 was partially achieved and 2 were not achieved. In total of the 20 targets, we achieved 14, 4 were partially achieved and 2 were not achieved. In terms of a percentage of those targets, we achieved 70%, as you indicated, Chair, and then partially achieved 20, and 10% were not achieved. Can we go to slide 6, please? Chair, I just wanted to highlight this slide just for members in case they were wondering about the different dates on the headings of some slides, which might appear confusing. So there's an updated annual report that guides the reporting for Schedule 3A public entities in terms of the requirements of the annual report, and also how the performance must be presented. So during the course of the year, when targets are amended or revised, the revised guide requires that the reasons for these targets be given, as well as the performance up to the date when the revisions were tabled. So you'll see that there's a reference to the 22nd of July, and I think it's the 10th of November as well. And those were the dates when these revisions happened. The overall annual performance, however, there you'll see that we have the color coding, the robot color coding, and the legend for interpreting it is obviously those that are on target are green, those that are still a work in progress are yellow, and the red ones are the ones that are off target. Can we then go to slide 11, please? I've skipped the first 2 because those are the targets that have been achieved. And just to indicate an example, Chair, the research and innovation that happened in Program 2, our planned annual target was 47 research outputs, and the actual achievement was only 11. But in terms of reporting, the assessment was done during the first quarter and was only reflective of the first quarter. So that's where the reasons, or that was rather the reason for the deviation. And as a result of COVID, basically a lot of the conferences where the papers are peer reviewed didn't happen. And those conferences were cancelled and deferred to the following year. And with the result that the output or the targets there had to be changed. Can we then move on to slide 15, please? Okay, slide 15 similarly indicates a revision of the target. You'll see there, Chair, the planned annual target was 90% of the global atmospheric watch infrastructure availability. We only managed to achieve, unfortunately, 75% there. Once again, it was the same in that the assessment was done for the first quarter, and COVID had a huge impact in terms of achieving that target. Similarly, the next target was the percentage of priority air quality areas, air quality stations that were available on the South African Air Quality Information System that met minimum data requirements. So the target there was 85%. We only managed to achieve 55%. And the chair did touch on some of them, but there was also the fact that we couldn't do repairs to equipment and our instruments, and also replacement of some of those instruments during lockdown. And the result was that there was insufficient or very low data recovery. Slide 16, the next slide. Chair, there I'm going to only highlight the 85% partial achievement, and this is the overall annual achievement as I indicated. It's the color-coded one. The target was 85%. We achieved 83% in terms of the global atmospheric watch infrastructure availability. Some of the challenges there was procurement of gases and also the failure of the instrument as well. Next slide, please, slide 17. This was the percentage of remote sensing observation infrastructure availability. There the target was 85%. We achieved only 73%. Some of the challenges faced was issues related to uninterruptible power supply, also standby generators, and also inadequate air conditioners at the radar sites. The issue around load shedding was also a big thing, and also power failures. Those were some of the reasons why those targets were not completely met. Can we move to slide 17, please? Under slide 17, I've mentioned the SARQUEST target. Overall for the year, the target was 75%. We achieved 67%. Once again, instrument failure, intermittent power failures, and also in this instance, we had vandalism of our Sharpeville station. And this contributed to the underachievement in terms of this target. Next slide, slide 18, please. Next one, slide 20. This just gives an overall sense, Chair, of the performance of Program 3. You'll see that this is the graphic representation. We achieved 57%, and we partially achieved 43%. Can I ask then that we move to Program 4, slide 22? Just in terms of this slide, Chair, the liquidity ratio, the target was 1.5. We achieved only 0.49. And once again, it was measured on the first quarter results. The reason for that was obviously the regulated and non-regulated commercial revenue that was negatively impacted as a result of COVID-19. And that was a big issue for us for quite some time and still is. The second area where we didn't achieve, which we'll also show in the color-coded slides for the overall annual achievement, was in terms of triple BEE. And there we had to also cut costs in terms of bursaries and training and stuff like that, that impacted very heavily on the entity. So we had to, basically we didn't achieve the target there. Slide 23. And you'll see that was the amendment or revision as far as 22nd of July was concerned. We also had to reassess our growth in commercial revenue and bring down the targets there. Also in terms of our percentage of workplace skills plan that was met. As I said, the expenditure on training and the like had to be reduced just to contain the costs for the entity. Then also we were supposed to do stakeholder perception ratings, and that couldn't happen also because of the budget constraints, and I think to an extent also because of the COVID impacts. Next slide, please. Chair, you'll note the date here was the 10th of November, and as I indicated, there were 2 revisions in July and November. And here you'll see that our actual achievement in terms of our liquidity ratio was 0.33%. It was very, very challenging because of the impacts of the loss of revenue from the aviation sector, particularly, and it was very difficult for us to actually then proceed with this particular target. Can I then ask that we move to slide number 25? Chair, yeah, the level of BEE for the annual target, we didn't achieve that. In terms of where we didn't meet the minimum requirements, it was skills development. As I indicated, we cut budgets for some of those. Supplier development in some instances, and also enterprise development. But we've since put in corrective measures to start to address the BBBE issue, because it is an issue of concern for us. The next slide, please. Slide 26. Chair, one of the areas where we didn't achieve was the attrition rate. Instead of the 8% target, we had achieved 11%, but that was also related to budget availability and the ability for the organization to keep interns on because of the budget issues. And hence we didn't achieve that 8% attrition rate. Next slide, please. Here, Chair, we partially achieved, and instead of the 5% target, we only achieved 60%. I've already indicated the reasons for that. Next slide, please. This is once again a graphic representation of Program 4's performance. You'll see 50% achieved, 33% in this instance. 2 out of the 6 targets were off target, and then 17% were in progress. Next slide, please, 28. 30 is the next slide I'd like to talk to. So just in terms of some of the human capital issues, because of the effects of COVID on the financial health of the entity, there were numerous vacancies that we couldn't fill as we had planned to fill. We also prioritized recruitment efforts towards filling the vacancies that were only that had been evaluated as critical, and with the result that 25 positions were deferred, as we couldn't afford to fill them at that time given the financial constraints. We were also, we undertook an exercise to review the organizational structure and to ensure its relevance and alignment to the strategic intent of the entity, and also managing the increases in employee costs. Then please go to slide 34. I'll take these as read, Chair, and I think it was just worth mentioning that notwithstanding all the difficulties, we did do a women advancement program which aimed to advance women within the organization as part of driving our gender diversity and equality in the organization, and we nominated a total of 15 employees to participate in the program, which is scheduled to end next year in March. Chair, I'm going to stop there in terms of my part of the presentation, and then ask that we go to slide 44, and then just ask the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Mzizi, to just talk to the issues that you wanted us to specifically focus on in terms of our audit outcome, and also the issue of consequence management. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mzizi.
Good evening, Chair. Thanks, CEO. Good evening, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and honorable members and colleagues. In terms of the audit report, as you have alluded to, Chair, we have received an unqualified audit report, and the audit report indicated that we have got to look at our operating deficit, because we had a deficit of 16 million for the current year, And I must indicate that this is an improvement as compared to the previous year. Previous year, it was 46 million. And for the current year, it's 16 million, which is 1.5% of our total expenditure. And in terms of our performance, program 3 was audited, and the performance was taken as useful and reliable. And areas that where we have got improved, it's in regards to in the areas of supply chain management, as there were a number of irregular expenditure that were identified that relates to prior year, and we are currently dealing with that. And if we can go to the next slide, please. The next slide talks to the financial sustainability of the organization. Just to address the issue of operating deficit, what we're doing is, as the organization, we have implemented the revenue turnaround strategy so that we can improve the commercial revenue, and cost containment measurements are implemented to optimize our costs. And we thank the department for the conversion of the conditional grant of 124 million to operational grant, so that we can be able to pay part of our employee costs as well as our operating expenses. Because if we didn't do that, we're not going to be able to pay for this part of our employee costs as well as our operating expenses. And we also thank the department for a once-off allocation of 100 million over 3 years, which will assist us in terms of our infrastructure investment. Thank you. And then the next slide, please. Now, the next slide basically indicates what actions we have taken in regards to consequence management on irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure. And Chair, I must also indicate that when one looks at this irregular expenditure number 2 and 4 and 10, they relate to an incident that happened with 1%, whereby when this regional manager for the Northern Cape left, then these irregular expenditures were uncovered. Now, in terms of number 1, it relates to the procurement processes that were not properly followed when we procured the lease for the national office. And in regards to this, investigations were completed, and the former CEO was charged, suspended, and he resigned in the process. And subsequent to that, a criminal case number 57104/2019 was opened with the police. And we are working with National Treasury to address this matter. We foresee or anticipate to complete this matter in the following year, because we also asking for the regularization of this lease agreement. Now, number 2, it relates to operating lease that was not properly followed. And then this is the one that I said it was uncovered when the regional manager for Northern Cape resigned. There's no financial loss, and hence this matter was completed. And the next one relates to number 3, related to expenditure incurred in excess of the budget. As I've said, that if you exceed your budget, it's for an entity, it's an irregular expenditure. This is related to prior years, and consequence management have been completed, and this was as a result of the reduction of the aviation income. The next slide, please. Now, in the next slide, number 4, it is the same as number 2, that relates to the same regional manager. And number 5 and 6, these are currently in progress, and consequence management have been completed. Now is for us to submit condonation reports to National Treasury. And then number 7, this one as well, it has been completed, and disciplinary processes were finalized, and a warning was issued against the manager SCM. The next slide, please. And in this slide, number 8 related to interest penalties that were paid. And this one, we are finalizing consequence management. And number 9 relates to extension of a contract without following proper procurement process. And these consequence management are being finalized, and a submission on condonation will be submitted thereafter. And number 10, the CSIR Stellenbosch rental also relates to the regional manager, as I've highlighted before. And number 11, the aircraft maintenance that expired. This one has been completed, and we finalized the disciplinary process, and the final written warning was issued against the manager SCM. And number 12, also we've opened a case against the senior manager SCM as well as the senior manager ICT, because after the investigation, we established that there were some allegations of forgery of documents, and then hence we open a police case in regards to this one. The last one regards to the HCM module that was cancelled due to the poor performance of a service provider. And the amount reported previously was 3.9 million. And after we've done the determination test, the amount is 2.4 million. And we've engaged the service provider so that we can recover these monies. And if we succeed with that, then we will avoid the litigation costs. But if we don't succeed with that process, then we'll have no option and follow the litigation process. With that, colleagues, Chairperson, it just indicates the actions that we're taking as an organization to address the irregular expenditure. I must also indicate, Chair, that we also identified some areas of skills gap that were there in SCM, and we are addressing that. And we've provided training on staff. We have engaged the National Treasury to assist us in terms of training on SCM. We also conducted the GRAB training for the finance staff so that our staff are properly equipped to be able to do the work. And the development of staff is an ongoing process that we are doing as management. Chair, thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mzizi. Then let me take this opportunity to hand over to colleagues who want to interact with the presentations. I see Honorable Weber's microphone is on. Minister Chrissy, can we update it to read Minister Chrissy, your gadget, not MEC Chrissy's iPhone? Welcome, Minister.
Good evening, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm having connectivity challenges. And one of my connectivity challenges is that this device doesn't allow me to change the name on the device. So my humble apologies, we'll have to deal with the downgrade. But I am in the meeting together with you, and I am listening to everybody's comments.
Okay. So it's okay. You're welcome, Minister. I was just teasing you on the MC.
Thank you.
Then it will be Honorable Weber, followed by Honorable Mbata. Those are the two hands that I can see now. In that order. Over to you, Honorable Weber.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think firstly, I remember when we started in 2019 where the Weather Bureau was, and it was really devastating. There was one or two CEOs before the acting one that this case is now against. So I think firstly, I would like to congratulate them and in improving the way they have. I know this is still a long way to go, but thank you for that and the commitment that is there. I have one question to this, and I am really happy to see the consequence management and what I've started. And the one of my questions is there's many disciplinaries, and it's, I believe, again, independent contractors that they're using for these disciplinaries. My question is that especially with the CEO case where people resign, I know we have spoken about this before, but where the CEO has resigned and there's a SAPS case opened, when is that court case coming forward and when will it be finalized? And then I've seen there's a couple other cases where people have resigned, and in some cases the money was found and everything. But my question is, what system or control measures do we have in place that someone doesn't fault and to avoid consequences that they resign? I do see here, though, that maybe that's part of your plan is when a person resigns, then we make a criminal case against them. But in any case, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, colleague. Honorable Mbata, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've got some few greetings to everyone, and I would appreciate the presentation. But I have a problem, like when you look at slide 16, where they say there were challenges was the procurement of nitrogen oxide gases during Q1 and to Q3, that subsequently failure to instrument. I don't understand that, although it's a work in progress, because those are the things that must always be available. And to me, it says there is no monitoring and evaluation, or which is done continuously to check if everything is in order. I don't think that we can have the issue of procurement, especially the N2O, that leads. If you look at the quarter, it was from Q1 to Q3, which is almost a year, full year. We were left with one quarter. It doesn't make sense to me. And then the other thing that I have checked is the issue of, when you check in slide 17, when they talk about the load shedding and so forth, which led to the instrument failure. Also, I think, as you know, that we've got lots of load shedding. I think SAWS must be always ready to have a backup system to say when we have load shedding or power failure, this is the backup system that can help us to make sure that there's continuous working of the instruments, because we are dealing with air quality here, which is very important. And the other with the monitoring, and the other thing I see there's where Mr. Norman Mzizi, he mentioned that there was an HC, but if you look at the presentation from Norman Mzizi, Mr. Norman Mzizi, I think somehow, Sawis, you need to pick up your socks on how you check your things. You don't have to wait until there is a problem, then you start investigation and do the corrective measures. There must be continuous monitoring and evaluation, because I believe that in each and every quarter, there is a report from different sections with the indicators, and you check whether there was progress or not. If there was no progress, what is the cause and how can it be corrected? It can't be that you wait until the end, then you start saying, here we go, this is the problem. Then you start with the corrective measures at the late stage. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you done?
Minister, yes, I'm done, Chair. Thank you. But I see MEC Chrissy is talking here. But I'm done. Thank you.
MEC Chrissy, mute your microphone, please.
My apologies.
We can hear a conversation with the other people. Let's mute it, Minister. Not yet muted. Thank you. Were you done, Honorable Mbata?
Yes,
yes. Towards the end, the Minister was interjecting you. So yes, you're done.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Then I will allow Honorable Mdise, who's going to be followed by Honorable Brandt, and then followed by Honorable Vanch. In that order. Similarly, Honorable Mdise is just, yeah. Honorable Mdise, over to you.
Greetings. Thank you very much. Greetings, Chairperson. Greetings to members of the committee. I think I must apologize for having disconnected. My network is quite it's quite disturbing. But then there are a number of issues that I thought I must raise with the committee, particularly in relation to the presentation that has just been made. Chair, again, forgive my voice. I'm not very well. I'm sure members of the committee can even recognize, and yourself, Chair, that I have a bit of problems and my throat has issues. But Chair, look, we welcome the presentation, and the point I'm making here, Chair, is the point that we've made before, that South African Weather Services is one of the critical entities of our department. But there are issues that cannot be left unattended in terms of the operations, and I think it's safe to make a strong recommendation first that in our oversight, the first area of contact should be the South African Weather Services, because there are a number of things that we are always told here in this by the South African Weather Services, and we don't get to satisfy ourselves over. And there are things that they are always presenting, and every time they speak to us, it's as if things are well, and everything is good and well. But Chair, we have
Is Honorable Bloom, this is still there? Colleagues, is it only me who can hear him?
I think we have
Can't hear
lost
him.
him, Chair. Disappear.
Disappeared, eh? Then can I allow Honorable Bryant, then we'll give him the chance after Honorable Kanch.
Thank you very much,
Honorable
Chairperson.
Bryant.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to firstly say, you know, how impressed I am with the presentation from South African Weather Service. I think they do continue to set the bar quite high when it comes to the performance of entities. There are certainly some challenges which will need to be remedied going forward. But I was very impressed, as Honourable Webber also mentioned, with the detail around the consequence management in particular. I see there are some challenges with revenue generation. It is understandable with the COVID lockdowns and the issues around, you know, a number of sort of concurrent challenges over the past couple of years. The economy isn't in the best state. But I do think that is something that needs to be focused on, alternative revenue generation. The outstanding matter of the CEO is certainly an issue that needs to be addressed as well. And I would also like to see, if possible, if we can get an update in terms. Sorry, did somebody sneeze?
Honorable Mutise, we'll give you the chance. Just mute your microphone. You got
Sorry,
cut. You can see your back. Yes. Yeah, you were being disrupted by Honorable Mutise is back, but we have decided Honorable Mutise, you're gonna come last. Proceed, Honorable Bryant.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I was just saying the outstanding matter of the CEO, if we could, you know, get an update on that in terms of the criminal proceedings going forward and keep track of that. And then I've got a question just in terms of that CapEx grant of 100 mil over the 3 years. Just want to find out whether there is a clear plan of what that money is going to be spent on, if there is a list of priorities. Because what we wouldn't want is at the end of those 3 years to find that, you know, a significant portion of that 100 mil hasn't been allocated or spent. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Can I hand over to Honorable Gancho?
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, colleagues and Chair. Let me also thank the presentation from SOUS. I only have one question, Chair, under capacity constraints. I think slide 30, when they were mentioning that they had to stop the filling of 25 positions, or it was deferred to as the entity could not afford to fill them. I just wanted to check how critical were those positions, and is that not going to make an impact to the organization? Is it not going to hinder the progress of the organization if they do not fill those positions? And also, Chairperson, under employment equity, I see that they are not paying much attention on people who are living with disability, because I see that there's zeros when it comes to their employment equity, especially for people living with disability. Can they also consider that and try to at least balance their employment equity? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Hanju. Honorable Mudise, can I hand over back to you again?
Chairperson, thank you very much. My network is really bad. It keeps on cutting me from time to time. But maybe before it cuts me again, let me quickly deal
Yes, try it.
yeah, let me straight to issues, Chair. I want to speak on organizational sustainability as per presentation of the South African Weather Services. It is our belief that they have a duty to achieve excellence within the organization, and they made us believe that. Now, how is it possible that there is no sustainability in the organization, and how is it possible that target is not achieved, and what is it that makes what is it that they can say to convince us that the organization is in good shape with its leadership, yet there is no yet that target is not achieved. But Chair, there are a number of other areas that
Honorable Mdisa, the network is messing you up. Maybe while one awaits him to come back, let me also ask the following. There is this issue around the Global Atmospheric Watch program, which focuses on building a single coordinated global understanding of atmospheric composition. Then maybe one needs to appreciate that South Africa is part of this program, which is good. But then maybe for clarity purposes, I want to understand what is the usefulness of Global Atmospheric Watch, and then what does it mean when South Africa fails to fully achieve this objective. On top of that, also one wants to understand, are you back, Honorable Ndisa? I had something like okay. And then on top of that, then one wants to understand whether the use of CAPEX for the refurbishment of this Global Atmospheric Watch infrastructure over the medium term, then it has addressed the perceived challenges that prevented the achievement of this target. And if that is the case that it has done that, so why wasn't the CAPEX budget used in the year under review to remedy the situation, rather than looking forward to the 2021-22 budget? I'm hearing some sounds. I thought Honorable Mdisa, it's here. Are you back, Honorable Mdisa? Oh, somebody, I can't see somebody's mic on. But yeah, then on that note, that's the issue that one is trying to raise. And then you have said yourself 85% rather infrastructure availability. Then can one then understand what does it mean for safety in relation to both locally and internationally when the radar service is unavailable? And then to follow up on that, is 85% the best percentage for radar availability based on the best practice elsewhere? And then one want also to understand, is it worth mentioning that the South African Weather Services has been consistently missing the 85% target for the radar infrastructure availability? These are the questions that one want clarity on that one. And then the other issue, there was this matter in your past financial year, the previous financial year, and came during the year, now this year under review. And then you are saying in your annual report, you are aiming to correct the deficit in meeting the target of rather infrastructure availability by refurbishing the infrastructure as I've indicated in the CAPEX budget for 2021-2022. Then the issue again on that one is with regard to the challenges of power supply. Now, to say how then this refurbishing of the infrastructure address these challenges of power supply. And then you must also provide the standby generator and air conditioning, like load shedding and power failures. How are we going to deal with that? Because we are raising this because the reality, the country is now facing load shedding. Hence, we can see most of the members here in the screen and some of the colleagues. So, this issue, as you'll be refurbishing the infrastructure, are you dealing with this issue of provision of standby generator or whatever? Because all those things, with the load shedding, how are you going to deal with that? Because it's like load shedding is something that we're going to live with for quite some time. And then with regard to the level 7 triple BEE, you've missed the targets and instead you achieved level 8, which is just one level above non-compliance. And then we want to understand now to say, as an entity, how are you then planning to achieve the level 7 triple BEE? Because there seems to be no improvement on delivering on these targets. So these are some of the issues that one wants to get clarity from your good selves. I don't see Honorable Mdise. I was doing that thinking that is going to be coming back. Maybe if you will come back while you are busy responding, I will give you the opportunity. Over to you, Chair, CEO, and team.
Thank you very much.
Very much quickly, but
oh, Honorable Mdise is back.
yeah, no. That so, just I think I must. I will just write my comments, even if it's on the chat group, because my network is really bad, Comrade Chair.
Yeah, just do that. They will read them as and I'll make sure that they respond to them. Do that, please. Thank you so much.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairperson, you were on the floor. You can proceed.
Yes. Thank you very much, Chair. And thanks for the comments from the members, and appreciating very much the compliment to Source for having brought it to where it is now. The good thing is management is here, they're listening, and they know not to drop the ball. So we have to keep up the good game. And the consequence management also will continue to deal with it in a way that, SOURCE remains the organization that is something that South Africa is proud of. The matter of the former CEO is something that has been, we're dealing with all the time. It was reported to the local police station, and we were to check on them. I'll let the CEO continue on this one. As far as I remember, they were checking on the progress, and if we are not happy with the progress, we have to escalate the matter to the national level, to the provincial. And if you're not happy with provincial, we have to take it up to national. So I'm not sure how far management is with that, but I'd like for them to comment on that. But other than that, Chair, I will let the management respond to the various specific questions that came from the members that relate to operational issues. CEO, can you lead the response?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll deal with the questions that I am able to deal with, and then I'll just hand over to some of the colleagues where they may want to add to my responses. I think just on the issue around the disciplinary matters, and the Honourable Weber raised the issue about the SAPS case and when that is going to be finalized. As the chair mentioned, we are obliged to, we did follow up in terms of the progress in relation to that particular case. But the matter is with the South African Police Services, and we can't really give an indication of when it's going to be finalized. It would depend on the investigating officer that is involved in the case. And we have periodically written to them to get progress on the matter. Unfortunately, they are the enforcement agency that is responsible for investigating the criminal matter. In fact, there's another one as well, which is currently with them. On the issue of the resignations and people not being held accountable or leaving before the disciplinary inquiries are finalized, that seems to be a general trend. When the disciplinary processes are instituted, the relevant employees will then resign before the disciplinary is finalized. However, there is recourse in instances where, for example, there is a financial loss to the institution. That loss must be recovered. So notwithstanding the resignation, you can still proceed to recover any monies that may be owed to the entity. And I must just stress, Honourable Webber, that the SAPS matter and the civil collection of any monies outstanding or the disciplinary process are independent of each other as well. So the one doesn't necessarily mean, so in other words, if you discipline a person, you might not necessarily institute a criminal prosecution unless there was a criminal activity. And I hope that is sufficient explanation in terms of that. Honorable Mbata raised the issue around nitrogen gases and procurement. Honorable Mbata, we were impacted very, very badly in terms of many of the procurement issues. So, for example, spares for some of our equipment comes from overseas as well. So there has been quite an impact, and I take note of the fact that you're talking about 3 quarters. I'm going to ask also that the managers responsible for the specific equipment just add to the explanation. But I think the issues were that the difficulty of accessing the site during the COVID period, as well as the supply, purchase and supply of gases and some of the other equipment as well hampered us in that regard. In relation to the load shedding and instrument failure that was raised by Honorable Mbata and also by yourself, Chair, from a point of view that it's a common occurrence these days, and that we should have a backup. So we have embarked on a procurement process to specifically deal with the issue of load shedding from the perspective of ensuring that we have uninterruptible power supply for our instrumentation. Excuse me. But I think it must be noted also that a lot of this instrumentation is very sensitive information. And when you have load shedding, you have almost a power surge when these things come back on. So we are, and we have been looking at alternatives in terms of the uninterruptible power supplies, as well as generators as backup systems. Honorable Mbata also mentioned the issue of the procurement of the non-performing HCM system worth 2.4 million. Just to mention that was part of a bigger system that was procured by the entity, and there were other modules. For example, a financial module as another example that were also procured, which had in fact a function. So it was part of a larger system the module that hadn't functioned or didn't go into operation was the human capital management module, and that is the one that we are going to follow up with the supplier in terms of getting back that 2.4 million in terms of what should have been done in that regard. Then Honorable Mbata mentioned also the fact that we need to look at corrective measures and have a continuous monitoring and evaluation system. The CFOs mentioned some of the issues in relation to that, and we've definitely taken cognizance of that. And in terms of our audit findings and follow-up in terms of the audit findings, as well as issues around our supply chain management, we're starting to implement standard operating procedures and also systemizing the processes in more detail to ensure exactly that.
CEO,
yes, Chair?
when I first asked Honorable Paulson to mute his microphone, I think it's impacting on you. Yes, Honorable Paulson. Okay, proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Then Honorable Bryant thank you for the compliment in terms of the presentation. It's really appreciated. I think, Honorable Bryant, you summed up also the issue around revenue generation quite well. It is one of the main concerns for the entity from the perspective of the government grant is continuously shrinking, and that is another area where we would need to focus on to make sure that I think it was Honorable Modise mentioned sustainability of the organization, where we would have to increase our own revenue generation to ensure that we do have financial sustainability going into the future. Honorable Bryant also raised the issue around the CapEx grant and what's going to be, what the money is going to be spent on. So we've deferred the spending of capital expenditure in the past 2 years, and we need to start, we need to not start, we need to refurbish some of our infrastructure. In that regard, we've got an infrastructure plan to address particularly the critical infrastructure first, so that we can continue with our observational networks and getting in crucial data. And I'll ask the relevant executive to just add if he feels there is a necessity to do so. Then on Honorable Ganshu's question regarding the capacity constraints and the 25 posts that were deferred, we have done an analysis in the organization in relation to the deferred posts. And in the presentation, we mentioned that we looked at which were the critical posts that would enable the further functioning of the entity. And those posts specifically were not deferred, and they were filled. So the ones that we had deferred, we obviously had taken out because they were not critical to the performance of the entity as such. Then Honorable Ganshu also mentioned the issue around disabilities. That is an area where we are focusing on, specifically in terms of our BBB targets, Chair, as well, because you also raised it in one of your questions. Just in terms of the issue on disability specifically, we as we indicated, we had taken action in terms of the BBB and improving the score. So based on our initial analysis, we had appointed a service provider, Chair, and the service provider indicated that there was
Where are you? CEO, where are you? What happened to you?
Are you not hearing me, Chair? Hello,
Where's
Chair?
your picture? You don't have load shedding yourself. Where's your video?
Sorry.
Because Brent Simon in this meeting is going to process me for allowing you the ghost.
I'm so sorry, Chair. I just thought for the connectivity. it would be better. But
Okay. You seem to be fine.
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Proceed.
So, Chair, just on the issue of disabilities, as I indicated, we've appointed a service provider to assist us with improving our BBB score. And one of the issues that was raised was the fact that we need to ensure that all our disabilities within the organization are declared. And there's a whole list of disabilities that qualify as disabilities that were not necessarily taken into account by the organization. And that's one way that we're looking to improve the target in terms of disability. We are not at the 2%, but I don't think we're at zero, Honorable Ganshaw. I think we're currently at about 1.73%, and I'd ask our acting corporate services manager to maybe just confirm the exact status of our BEE as far as disability goes, but I think it's 1.73, if I'm incorrect in that regard. Chair, the other issues that you raised were in relation to the Global Atmospheric Watch and the fact that it's part of an international program, and also what it would mean for our international obligations if it were to fail. Chair, we are one of the region's most prominent, if not the most prominent observational points, basically. And it does definitely impact on the region and Africa if we don't provide that information. So it is imperative that not only for us as a country, but for the region, the Southern African region, we have the Global Atmospheric Watch up and running. It's also part of our commitments to the World Meteorological Organization as well. So it definitely will impact on the relationship and also the information that they require. But in that regard, we also have looked at upgrading some of the instruments. Recently, we've looked at the purchasing of a spectrophotometer, for example, because the ones that we're using were donated to us and are 15 to 20 years old. And I'll ask also that the relevant executive, if he wants to add in terms of the GO infrastructure having to be replaced. Chair, you mentioned why we hadn't CapEx, and just for a better understanding, Chair, because of the huge impact of the revenue that's generated generally under normal circumstances, we have had to take the capital expenditure. We couldn't use it for the GO infrastructure. What we did have, we had to use to just sustain the operations of the entity. And we had to convert the capital expenditure to operational expenditure to just ensure that we survive. We presented the liquidity ratio in our presentation, and that should give a good sense, Chair, of where we were as an entity. So in other words, if we hadn't taken the money that was earmarked for capital expenditure and for our infrastructure and use that for the operations, we wouldn't be able to operate. So simply put, we wouldn't be able to to pay salaries and stuff like that. So as a result, we had to use that funding for the operational expenses, unfortunately. In terms of the radar infrastructure and unavailability as well, Chair, I'm going to ask the relevant executive to just also explain that. There are other options in terms of us accessing data apart from our radars. They do have a technical benefit in the sense that some of the data that we derive from our radars is a bit more accurate, but there are other options in terms of satellite data that we can use and so forth. So it's not a situation where we're totally in the dark kind of thing if it does go down. But in terms of the quality of the data and I think it's the near time or nowcasting. It's quite important, but the technical details I'll ask the relevant executives to explain. Then the issue around the power supply I've already addressed, Chair. Yes, we definitely load shedding. It is going to be with us for a long time, and we have put in place measures in relation to, as I said, uninterruptible power supply, generators, as well as air conditioning in relation to our equipment, which is very expensive and sensitive. I've addressed the in terms of some of the ways that we're going to ensure compliance, Chair. So we are looking at alternatives as well, because some of our purchases specifically for equipment are overseas purchases.
Gift, please. Gift. Can we plead with Gift to mute his microphone, please?
My apologies, Chair. My apologies, Chair.
Mute it. You're disrupting the CEO. Sorry about that, CEO.
No problem, Chair. So, Chair, in terms of some of our purchases, it's equipment from overseas, and we're also looking at alternatives in that regard in terms of testing other equipment, maybe locally, to see if we can get a local supplier for some of the equipment. But in some instances, it is very specialized equipment, and our networks have already been established. So in some instances, it is very difficult to address the issue, but we are looking at alternatives in terms of enterprise development and looking at innovative ways to address the issues where we are not doing too well. I think in the other areas in terms of demographics and that kind of thing, we are doing very well. And it's just the point system. So if it's any consolation, the service provider indicated to us that we are in fact technically at level 7, but we can't say that until they've certified us as a level 7. So I'm hoping, Chair, that we will be able to address that issue in the coming months. I think those are my responses. I'm going to just ask the relevant executives to just add on the areas where I fall down on the technical aspects of particularly the GO and the other infrastructure, the radar that you asked, and maybe the issue around the exact figure for people with disabilities. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Ndabambi, Dr. Mpepia, and Ms. Makungola, if you can just add, please.
Thank you, CEO, and good evening to Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, my Chairperson of the Board. I just, firstly, the GAU, the Global Atmospheric, is actually monitoring the greenhouse gases members. So that we can be able to know the level of the emissions in the country. Currently, we are one of the countries that are doing well in monitoring that. But then the investment on the infrastructure supporting that is needed. So it's one of the areas that we are prioritizing because we want to make sure that we maintain that station. It's one of the few in the world, about 30 in the world. Ours is situated at the Cape Point, and the tourists actually frequently go there to look at that station. And then members, in terms of the 85%, 85% is a good percentage, but the globe would like to go to 96%. But in the region and in most countries, for example, in Africa, the few existing radars are not even working. Some, for their maintenance, they ask for our support. So we are doing very well. And we've got radars that have actually outside their useful life. They are very old, but we are still able to make them work. It's just that we didn't have a budget to invest in this infrastructure for a long time. But we did conduct condition assessment that informed us. So now with the capex we have, actually from mid-year, I think from around June, we started to see their performance going up again. But then you also asked, Honorable Chairperson, that if we do this refurbishment, this air conditioner, while there's a load shedding, is it gonna solve the problem? The challenge is that CEO alluded to a surge. So once this radar infrastructure is disturbed, even with your strong backup, your UPS, so it takes time to stabilize, then that impact on the availability of the data. So one of our long-term solutions were engaging the state security agents to see if this radar infrastructure cannot be declared as national assets so that they can be prioritized by entities like your ESCOM, because your strong backup is not gonna solve 100%, but it's gonna assist. But if then the load shedding is getting so serious as it does, it's really interrupting that infrastructure. Hence, we think the long-term solution would be to have them declared as the national key point. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Okay. Who's next, CEO?
Thank you. I don't know if Dr. Zepi has covered. I think it might be.
Yes, I think Dr. Monikele has covered most of the stuff. Just maybe I might just add on the importance of the Global Atmospheric Watch to the honorable members that I know they're just coming from the UNFCCC meeting of 26. You might have obviously heard about the amount of greenhouse gases where they're going up, and that is as a result of the station that we have. And one other importance is it contributes to the Intergovernmental Government Panel of Climate Change, the IPCC. And as a result of that, obviously the IPCC synthesized the current science, the current understanding, and from there it gives policy direction that the UNFCCC will look at and respond. But the other contribution it makes is to the Montreal Protocol, because one of the other gases that we're monitoring there is the ozone. So it's contributing to quite a lot of treaties that South Africa has assigned to. I just wanted to bring that context to the importance.
Okay, before you leave, the issue was that what does that mean if the country fails to fully achieve that? That's the question I thought you wanted to come on in.
Yes.
Can you address that?
Yes, if we are not keeping up with the requirements of, let's say, making sure that the data are available, then you'll obviously not have enough information even to come up with the science, the understanding of where we are. So you'll not be able to contribute to all those treaties that I've already mentioned, whether it's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or whether it's giving direction to the UNFCCC or also the Ozone Montreal. So they all rely on the information that is coming from that side. It tells them whether the amount of greenhouse gases, are they increasing, are they decreasing, or are they staying stable?
Are you done?
I'm done.
That's the only issue you wanted to address?
Yes, I just wanted to bring that element to add to what my colleague have already said. I think he has already addressed the issue around the radar network that is We've got 12, some of them are old. I think I don't have to add anything there. That's fine.
Okay. CEO, are our questions adequately responded to before I allow members to make follow-ups if they have some?
Yes, Chair, I think we covered all the questions. Just Honorable Modise talked about a target not achieved. I wasn't sure which one, but I'll wait for him to put it in the chat box, Chair, or give us a written question regarding his concerns. But otherwise, we're done, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, any follow-up? None. Okay, I think we're managing our time rightfully. So, Minister, I'll give you to comment on both. Or you want to say something now, DM?
Oh, thank you, Chairperson. No, I'm fine, Chairperson. So far, I'm fine with all the responses. Thank you very much.
Minister?
Chairperson, I'm also fine. I'm also fine with the responses. I've got nothing to add.
Safe to say, you show me that organization, a World Meteorological Organization, what that the journalist was trying to explain. Yes, I need to confirm. You show us those things, by the way. Thank you, Minister. Can we then, under the circumstances, then move to San B? Yes, we are going to move to San B now. Chairperson and team, I've already welcome you in here. But the Minister and Chairperson and the CEO of San B, I think it's worth to congratulate the team, the entity, for achieving this 89% of their set targets. They had 44 targets and then they've achieved 39. I think it's a great improvement when we look at their 67% in the 2019-20 financial year. So we only then, Minister, as you have indicated the other time, we only expect now San B to improve from 89%. Chairperson and the CEO is doable to achieve 100%. As one has said earlier when we were dealing with the South African Weather Services, San B also needs to work towards a clean audit. It can't be that you remain unqualified and then we want you to have a clean audit. And then I think, speaking on behalf of the collective, we are very much excited to note that people now are considering going to your zoological gardens, and you exceeded your visitors' targets. I think that's a good thing. We need to appreciate it, and it's exciting as a lot to say. And people are trying now to understand the need to then visit these zoological gardens. Then we should think what is outstanding, CEO, Chairperson, and then the entire collective of San B. We just now need to work like what Sunparks is doing on getting schools coming back to the gardens. And we know it's something that we are going to look at. But I should think, speaking on behalf of the committee, we are all pleased that San B has remained unchanged with an unqualified audit opinion. But the issue that you hear members raise is around, which we are not happy, is with regard to the findings on the annual performance report and the issue around compliance with legislation. Having said that, Chairperson, let me hand over to you then introduce the team, and then later on allow the CEO to present. Like I said earlier, the principle is that most of the issues can be. You appeared last week in the committee on the fourth quarter progress report. Let's then deal with the issue. The members have read your annual report, unless if there are changes that you need to bring to the attention of the committee, you can deal with that, but focus more on the audit outcomes and your post-audit action plan, so that next time when we come back, we're able to then hold you accountable to what you have committed that you're going to do. Over to you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chairperson. Good evening to yourself, Honourable Creasy, our Deputy Minister, all the entities, our colleagues. I am this evening supported by our CEO, Shonisani, who is a fondly known as Shoni Mutsenzi, and he's our Chief Executive Officer, whom I introduced last week, Honourable Chairperson, in your absence, as our newly appointed CEO. He's not so new anymore. He's been around for 4 months, so he's not so new anymore. I'm also supported by Ms. Carla, Ms. Bethel.
There's something that's very interesting. Yes. We're doing some oversight with the minister, and this name of Shonisani kept on coming. There's one chief leader. The minister will share with you experience on this issue of the Shonisani. On a lighter note.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. So yes, I'm also supported by Ms. Carmel Mbezo, who's our Head of Biodiversity Science and Policy Advice, by our CFO, Ms. Lorato Sitole, and our COO, Mr. Elliot Mashile. Chairperson, thank you so much for the acknowledgement of the achievement of the 89%. We had many challenges, but it's a remarkable improvement from the 67% of 2019-2020. Our CEO will obviously present in more detail on our performance of the audit and SANBI's financials. I would just like, Honourable Chairperson, to emphasize a few brief remarks. The year under review was challenging for SANBI. We were confronted with managing, of course, the impact of COVID, and that included ensuring the protection of our employees, of their families, the protection of our assets. And of course, this was all impacted as well by fiscal constraints. We, however, continue to find other alternative and complementary means to achieve the same, even in the context of the COVID limitations. Chairperson, I want to just commend the passion and commitment of our staff and the support from our minister, our deputy minister, the department, our partners, just to ensure that SANBI delivers on its mandate. And this was done obviously through reprioritizing and developing innovative solutions. As you mentioned before, yes, we've achieved an unqualified external audit outcome. However, of course, we strive towards the clean audit. This is what we do want. This is what we have committed to, and we certainly will try to do that going forward. Our procurement spend, we're proud to say that 90% of our procurement spend was spent on companies that are over 50% Black owned. And that's, we believe, is quite an achievement. SANBI, of course, we invested in additional capacity targeting our critical areas. And this was done within the context of limited resources and, of course, competing priorities. We're also proud as SANBI to have participated in the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program for the job opportunities for young people. 1,500 jobs were created during 2021 financial year, of which 553 jobs were created just in the 3 months extension period of April to June. As SANBI, our capacity to develop cutting-edge and globally recognized biodiversity assessments was demonstrated through the development of the assessment report on the status of biological invasions and their management in South Africa. SANBI also, Honourable Minister, Honourable Chairperson, further developed the National Botanical Garden Expansion Strategy for implementation until 2030. This is just a synopsis, and Honourable Chairperson, before I hand over to our CEO and our team, SANBI would just like to take this opportunity to once again congratulate our Minister, yourself, the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and including the whole delegation, the South African delegation, for leading our country so well at the COP26, for the negotiations and for the positive outcomes. Thank you so much. I hand over to our CEO. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Where is the CEO?
Oh, thank you, Honourable Chair. I'm here. Okay. Should I proceed? Yes. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair, Honourable members, Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, the chairs of the two entities that are here, colleagues. Chair, I can confirm, if we go to slide 6, that the report hasn't changed from what we presented last week when we were focusing on Q4. Therefore, Chair, as per your guidance, we would not go through each of the areas. We did explain where progress was not fully achieved, as in work in progress. Previously, we also explained reasons and qualified the areas that were regarded as off target. Of course, as it was indicated by yourself and also by the chair, an improvement from 67% on target in the prior year to 89%. And also the challenge that is posed by yourself, Honourable Chair, and also repeatedly by our Minister, that we need to continuously improve and work towards and achieve the clean audit as we move forward. That is the path that we have embraced, and will continue to work towards that and also achieve and also maintain that. I think the Honourable Chair's observation on the area of effort that we need to look at when it comes to schools and learners coming into gardens, botanical gardens and zoological gardens. We take this area of education and awareness very seriously because we believe that an investment in environmental conscious citizenry starts with an investment on learners, because irrespective of which career they will take, in all of those, there will be decisions that will have or may have environmental implications. And therefore, gardens such as these provide that opportunity for environmental consciousness. Of course, we have, if you go to the next slide, the summary is provided there of the number of targets as indicated. And as I said, I may not necessarily have to go through them again, confirming that nothing has changed from the previous presentation to the Portfolio Committee last week. I have my colleague here going to slide 34, our CFO, Lorato Sitole, Ms. Lorato Sitole. She will be taking us through the, as Chair has indicated and directed, the audit performance and what we have done since, and also what we continue to do during the financial year and also after the audit. I can confirm that we have a detailed audit plan, and when it comes to the key area, as was presented also by Source, when it comes to irregular expenditure, we've worked so hard to deal with that matter to a point where we now are at around only 2 million or so. In that case, moving from what we had carried over from prior years, being around 147 million, it's quite a remarkable achievement. And we are still working and waiting for a critical condonation of around 35 million rands. After we had gone through and received condonation of around 122 million as a result of our efforts in dealing with these matters, consequence management, and also putting up plans to avoid a repeat of those areas and training staff in that regard to make sure that compliance is enhanced. So I will request the CFO, Ms. Lorato Sitole, to take us through the report and also go through the areas of interventions, the remedial action, and also the controls that we have put in place. Ms. Lorato, our CFO.
Good evening, Chairperson of the committee members, Minister, Honorable Minister Chrissy, Deputy Minister, Chairpersons of the board, and DG and CEOs. Chair, Sanbi received an unqualified audit opinion. We had two matters which the auditors felt that they needed to highlight to the user of the financial statements without amending, modifying the audit opinion. The two matters are firstly dealing with the new accounting standard that deals with GRAP 110 on living and non-living resources. In terms of the standard, we are meant to have values for all living and non-living resources. And what we experienced was that with the zoological animals at the zoological gardens, we did not have a market to be able to establish values for them. However, with GRAP Directive 2, we still have 2 further years to test the market and see if there are values that can be attached to them. Then we had an issue of a material deficit compared to the previous financial year of 78 million as a result of not being able to trade. And what we had done with the deficit was to have a repurposing of some of our infrastructure funding approved by National Treasury. Issues on compliance with legislation. On the next slide, we had issues around material misstatements on annual financial statements and the annual report, and those were rectified prior to the finalization of the audit. We had issues around expenditure management dealing with irregular expenditure amounting to 17 million, which was not prevented, and also fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 588,000. Consequence management, we were found that we had not yet taken disciplinary steps against some of the officials that had incurred irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The remedial actions will be dealt with in the slides that are still to be attended to. Then revenue management, that we did not fully implement the appropriate steps to collect all the revenue that is due to the organization. On the next slide, dealing with material findings in respect of usefulness of performance information. Program 1 was the audited program, where it was found that some of our indicators were not clearly specific in how they were detailed. Chair, it's the three indicators as detailed there: the number of conservation programs in the NZG, the number of maintenance, development, capital and infrastructure projects completed, and new infrastructure projects at Weleha and Toyando Botanical Gardens. I will also deal with the remedial actions of those shortly. Then on the next slide, internal control deficiencies that are detailed on the audit report, dealing with performance information where technical indicator descriptions and planning documentation was not compiled in a manner that would not be ambiguous and were not clarified at the beginning of the financial year, meaning that the indicator would then not be well defined. And concerns around systems and processes that were not consistently applied in reporting performance throughout the financial year. Then preventative compliance monitoring controls in relation to the repeat findings on non-compliance. On the next slide, dealing with the remedial actions in how we are addressing these matters. Firstly, with the material misstatements on the financial statements, we have reviewed and updated our financial statement preparation checklist to address all the gaps that we had identified. Then we have prepared and scheduled training, and we have secured a service provider that will provide training to all finance staff members around GRAP. In February 2022, we have also revised our year-end plan to ensure that we have our general ledger closed much earlier at the end of the financial year. And this should allow for adequate time for management to review all the supporting documentation and ensure that it agrees to the final figures that are on the financial statements. And also we have done an organization-wide presentation highlighting areas where we need to improve with the supporting documentation and the importance of adherence to year-end timelines. We have also started preparing for the financial year end in this month. On the next slide, dealing with expenditure management, this would be on the irregular expenditure of 17 million and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. As the CEO has already indicated, in relation to the amount that was incurred in the financial year of 17 million, we have already completed investigations and disciplinary action and received condonation amounting to 17.1 million, meaning that we are left with 2 transactions amounting to 300,000 that we are still handling. But we also considered the nature of irregular expenditure as it carries forward from the previous financial year. And we have attended to the opening balance. We have already received condonations amounting to 122 million. And we have also submitted a further 35 million. For both these amounts, investigations were done and a forensic investigation was also conducted on the 122 million, and disciplinary processes were implemented accordingly. Members may note that the total amount, the 122 and the 35 exceed our total amount of irregular expenditure on the annual report on page 234, note 39, on the annual report, as a result of National Treasury indicating that in some of the instances we required donations from the Office of the Chief Procurement Officer and also the Accountant General's office. So we've received from both divisions in National Treasury. At the time of compiling the report, we are at 3 million that we are still taking through disciplinary processes, but as CEO has indicated, we are now at 2 million. The 588,000 relating to fruitless and wasteful expenditure has been investigated, and the reports are going through the loss control function to determine the appropriate actions that are to be taken thereafter. On the next slide, dealing with revenue management, we had a policy in place on revenue management, and we have enforced that. And we are also performing quarterly review of recoverability of debts and making the necessary payment arrangements where it's necessary, where our debtors are not able to pay. I must also highlight that most of these debtors, if not all of them, it's the restaurant tenants that are operating from our gardens. We've also seen an improvement in the revenue collection due to the enforcement. Preventative compliance monitoring controls. We have developed a detailed audit improvement plan which was considered by the Audit and Risk Committee, and we are reporting on a quarterly basis to the Audit and Risk Committee. As at end of September, we were already at 50%, and we have made it a target that we should achieve a clean audit. We've also reviewed internal processes around supply chain to ensure that, and even financial management in August 2021, which was immediately after the conclusion of the audit, to ensure that we are able to identify and prevent irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful before it gets incurred. We've improved on our standard operating procedure manual on the prevention of irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful. And we held workshops at the beginning of this month in the first week with all non-finance staff members to ensure that there is capacitation throughout the organization, and we are all able to deal with these matters. In the previous financial year, we received training from National Treasury on irregular expenditure, and this focused on the entire organization and not just on finance staff members. This has really assisted us since we received the training last year, November. And we also received training from CIDB from dealing with local content matters by the SCM team. On the next slide, issues on performance information. We have reviewed the targets for 2021-22, and we made further amendments on the technical indicators. And we have made sure that there is consistent recording now of all the achievement throughout the financial year. we've reviewed the sequencing of activities around planning to ensure that the budgeting cycle is informed by the output indicators, and we also make sure that where necessary going forward, planning is concluded before the beginning of the new financial year. Thank you, Chair. I am done with the audit report. With your guidance, should I move to the audited financial statements? Can you deal with the cost plan, because talk to this. Mrs. Tommy, or it's only you can hear me. My apologies, Chair. I think the network was quite bad on my side, hence I've switched off the video. So I did not, I was not able to hear anything. Okay. The audited financial statements, can you talk to them in line with zooming in your post-audit action implementation plan, because it talks to this? CEO, I'm struggling to hear. I don't know if I'm the only one.
I think, Honorable Chair, the line from the Honorable Chair is not so clear. But earlier on, I heard that the Chair indicated that we focus on the audit areas and also the remedial action, which is the presentation that Ms. Tole did. Yes, yes.
And then the post-audit action plan is the remedial action.
Yes, we've got a detailed, I think Lorato will also come in. There is as she indicated, that the full, we pulled out on the remedial actions, what was the finding, or what were the findings, and also what were the corrective measures in progress, as was presented on the tables that Ms. Lorato was taking us through. And confirming that we've been on, by the time of the compilation of the report, we've been just over 50%, and we are on course to cover all the areas. But the specific areas that were highlighted on the findings are as per what is indicated in the presentation that Lorato did, unless if Lorato you would want to go further than that.
Through you, Chairperson, as CEO indicates, the post-audit plan is detailed on slides 38 to slides 41 as the remedial actions. Okay. But it doesn't say who's gonna do what when, like the others that were received. Maybe you can share it with us later. Chileka.
Hello, Chair.
You see what the department? Yes. You understand what I'm trying to raise here?
No, Chair.
We've seen with this department what they've done yesterday.
Yes.
They were able to share with the fully fledged post-audit action plan,
yes.
Clear timeline, what's gonna happen when, who's gonna do that. We're not seeing it here. And if you had my opening remarks earlier, CEO, is based on the fact that these are matters that are recurring, that they don't get attended to. We don't have such document. Maybe you can, the committee secretary can share with you what we're talking about, then you can then send it to us later. Because here, then it's gonna cost us to probe a lot of questions under the circumstances. And let me then hear the members. Your hand is up, CEO.
Chairperson, I didn't raise a hand. I didn't raise my hand, Chair.
The microphone was on. I thought you wanted to speak.
No. Chairperson, I didn't raise my hand. I hear what the chair is saying, and will follow suit as such.
Post-audit action plan, that's make us to be able to follow up with you, because the information on consequence management too seems to be lacking. You see, the department, what the department is done, they tell us to say, this is the UIFW that we've experienced. It was composed of these amounts and this, they break it down. And then they say, if it's Shonisan who was responsible for that, they do that. And these are the measures that we've taken. If they issue that miscondonation, they were able to explain that to us.
Okay, we'll be able to.
That's what, yes. Okay, let me hear members who want to interact. Oh, the chairperson wants to say something. The chairperson.
Honourable Chairperson, I just wanted to say that can we submit those action plans to the Portfolio Committee in writing? I would appreciate if we can do that. Thank you.
Yes, that's the plans that we are going to do oversight. When you come present, we want to also look at how far are you progressing. Yes, it's there because that's the document you shared, the management shared with the AG. They have it. Just that they didn't do a presentation on it for us. I don't know how was the information communicated, but the department was able to do that. Let's then allow members to raise hands. There's Dave Bryant. That's the only hand that I'm seeing so far. Honorable Bryant.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, it was just on the point that's just been raised around sending that information through. I think one of the benefits of presenting it to the Portfolio Committee is allowing us, as you've mentioned, to conduct that oversight and interrogate that information and ask questions. So I'd just request possibly that at a later stage we get the opportunity to interact with that in the forum as well.
Okay. Yes. She's trying. They are trying to share something here. Still, it doesn't. Oh, it's a resolve finalized. You go back to the previous slide. You see, everything is finalized. Resolved. Yes, you see. Refer to the 2021 action plan below. Where is it? That's what we are talking about. If you see the previous slide that you were showing, who's ever sharing the slides? This is what we are talking. Go back, you see, it's red. Refer to the 2021 Audit Action Plan attached below. Where is it?
Honourable
That's
Chair.
The document
Honourable Chair, this is the presentation we made for the department. I think Chileka is showing it in order that the CEO must understand what you expect from him.
What are we talking about? Yes, because that read, we have that finally there was a separate document that the department prepared, the one that is referred to. That's the one that we are talking about. On those matters that the AG has put, that it qualified at you on the matters of emphasis. That's the issue that we're talking about. But there's a commitment that the chairperson has said that it can be made, it can be provided to us. It's there because that's what you shared with the AG. Okay. Honorable Brian, you still want to proceed under the circumstances? Because basically
Yes,
when they share with us, we'll have to submit that in writing if we've got issues.
Yes, Chairperson. The other point that I just wanted to raise was
they are prepared to come tomorrow after we finish with Unpacks. They can present, because remember we are working on under strict timelines yet for us to finish this report. What do you propose, Honorable Brian? Yes.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, that's acceptable. I just want to just raise a point on the the matter around kids and gardens, and I completely understand the difficulties with COVID and that process. But I just hope going forward that an emphasis is placed on ensuring that program is rolled out, because it is incredibly important for our young people to understand the importance of our gardens, and also to be properly educated so that they can have a sense of ownership over these facilities as well. The presentation in the most part was good. I think a lot of those targets have been met. But as I say, I think we're just awaiting that final document, and once we have an opportunity to interact with that, we can then ask further questions. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes, because we need to finalize this report. Can I check CEO and the CFO? Are you able to come back tomorrow? Maybe after Sunparks will only focus on what that action plan will be saying. Is it possible? The colleagues that are traveling, I think, is the South African Weather Services ones. We are done with them.
Chairperson, will do our best to adapt to the program of the portfolio committee. We do have that.
Yes, you have it. You have it, I think. Yeah, you have it. Yeah, and we know that the issue that we then had to call you now, even on our part, there's a number of meetings we couldn't check that one will have alerted you that there's this document that is missing. But nevertheless, I should think I had issues that I wanted to, or should we shelve all the questions, colleague, to tomorrow? But I think we're going to have a time constraint. Let's focus on the audit action plan tomorrow. Then I wanted to raise this, maybe CEO Chairperson, but it comes to that. In fact, I'm trying to say the issues that we were saying because of the lack of this audit action plan. When I read your document, then I wanted to understand the details of those audit filings, because in your audit action plan, you were going to say these are the ones, and then whether those things were recurring issues, especially the matter related to the compliance with the legislation. And then also whether it's possible to identify those officials for breaching applicable legislation, and then what you intend to do. I think that's the scope of what must entail your post-audit action plan. But then the other issue that one want to raise is with regard to your issue. We know you are an accredited implementing entity of both the Adaptation Fund and the Green Climate Fund. Maybe you can now quickly clarify your work in this regard, explaining, especially when you had to explain how much the country has attracted in terms of finances since the designation of yourself as the accredited implementing entity. That's the things that I read as I was reading your annual report. And then the other issue, which I believe you have reported in the past to the committee, can you then maybe also update the committee whether your work on the 10th, that is Kolera, and the 11th, that is Toyando National Botanical Gardens. is complete now. Isn't that Valera was the 11th one? I want now to understand whether you are fully functional now. And then the last one would be the current status of poaching in your national botanical gardens, especially with those that have got targeted species. That's the issues that one, as one was going through the reports, one had issues on. Thank you, Chairperson, and CEO and the team. Over to you.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. I thank your indulgence that we will come back tomorrow and give the details on the audit findings, the occurring issues, and so forth. We really do appreciate that. But I'd like to hand over to our CEO and Kamal just to explain on the adaptation program and how we are fully functional in our other botanical gardens. So, Shawnee, can I hand over to you, please? My connection is also beginning to fade. Thanks, Shawnee.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honourable Chair, honourable members. I think what the Chair has indicated is correct, that we are one of the accredited implementing entities in terms of the GCF. Of course, when it comes to that role, what we do on behalf of the country in the space of the context of ecosystems-based adaptation, because the understanding is that as much as we've got mitigation targets as a country, we understand that, and it's proven scientifically, that climate change effects are here with us. And in that regard, therefore, we would have to adapt to those. Certain things would have to be adjusted in a particular manner. And we have to be forward-looking on the basis of or as informed by the projections that our scientists have indicated. And therefore, this kind of work and some be leading in terms of the interface between what needs to be done in the country and also the access to the funding, especially adaptation fund or any other funding coming through the GCF. We have so far worked on a number of projects and programs and proposals, and they are at different stages. Kamel will explain that. We have looked at areas that interface biodiversity, adaptation, and the protection of strategic water sources. We have prioritized areas that deal with disaster risk reduction and how best those areas from an ecosystems-based perspective the country can respond. And also other areas that interface with agriculture from a small-scale farming perspective and how best those can be made to be more resilient in terms of approach, in this case or in this context, using ecosystem-based adaptation approaches. So are other areas, as Kamel may come in and also talk to. Regarding the second question, I think Koleha in the Eastern Cape, one of our newest botanical gardens, it's now coming to be operationally not compliant, but I'm saying that it will be on board as like others sooner. We have invested and prioritized a lot of capital investments in those areas, and we've got programs that are coming and continuing to make sure that it can work as like any other garden. So the basic infrastructure is being put in place, and sooner we're hoping that by the end of the financial year, sometime next year, it will be in a manner that we can say is functioning basically like what we want to see in all the gardens. We also have the Triangle Botanical Garden. We'd like to thank Minister for approving the gazetting of this. And of course, soon I will be having that celebration for the gazetting of this garden, but it is functional. There's still a lot that still needs to be done. So we have cited these two for special attention because they are coming on board. Of course, the plan is to make sure that we have representation of all the biomes and also to have every province having one minimum botanical garden. So we are left with Northwest, and the process is underway to try and secure a garden in that space. So the negotiations and the partners with the province, the district, with local municipality, conservation agencies in that area, we are working on that, and we are hopeful that sooner that garden will join Twendo and Toleja as the third newest in the portfolio that we have across the board. I'll request Carmel to respond and add on further on matters of GCF. And I can confirm that when it comes to all these gardens, because gardens are set up to do 5 things, that is to contribute to conservation, the issue of education that was raised earlier on, research, of course, recreation through a number of activities, visitors, events, and also their contribution to tourism. And therefore, we're looking at all of those, and the standard operating procedure for all of them would target all those areas to be delivered. And therefore, when it comes to targeted species, as the chair indicated, I did indicate that we want to have a fair or the best representation of all the biomes. But apart from that also, when it comes to the work on research and herbaria, what we want to see is that our collections, even in the herbaria, at the moment we've got more than 2 million of those specimens that give us a fair indication of how and what is it that we have as a country. When we say we're a mega diverse country, that representation gets to be shown and displayed through those herbaria. But beyond that also, the research that goes into that supports many other things, including policy formulation and decision-making on matters that have implications to those species. Pamela, can I request you to come in and talk to the GCF and also a reflection on assessments on species that we continue to conduct? Pamela?
Thank you, CEO. And thank you, Honourable Chair, Honourable Members. Minister, Deputy Minister, and Board Chairs.
Are you having lots of things? Come in.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Can you see me, Honourable Chair?
Yes, come in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Honourable Chair, in terms of the adaptation fund, we received $2.5 million for our small grants program, which is taking adaptation to the ground. And then also under the adaptation fund, we received $7.5 million for an initiative around building resilience in the Umgeni catchment. And also, under the Green Climate Fund, we received $380,000 under what they call readiness. It's a readiness grant to really assist us to develop a set of processes and tools to facilitate the improved management of SANBI's anticipated Green Climate Fund portfolio. And as CEO has said, we've been working on a number of large cross-sectoral project concepts that we're going to be submitting to the Green Climate Fund in an effort to mobilize the funding. And then, Honourable Chair, In terms of assessments, we do, like CEO has said, a number of assessments on plant species and also on animals. SANBI has done really well in terms of the red listing process, where we look at the status of our threatened species. We use the IUCN red listing process, and this is something that we're continuously working on. A big part of our work also is around ecosystem classification and assessments. Thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think our questions are adequately responded to, with the view that we're going to deal with the post-audit action plan tomorrow. I don't see any other hand. Can I check with the DM if there's anything she wants to say?
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'm so happy that we're nearing to finish, because I was just worried my battery is too flat. We've been out without electricity for the past 5 hours. I think it's on my phone now. No, thank you very much, Chair. I think CEO Mzezi has responded to your questions, and also Ms. Bezos has also responded to all those questions that you wanted clarity. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. And I think that we will support the colleagues to ensure that they do submit the necessary audit action plan and give details to the committee on all remedial measures that they are taking on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then it means it's bringing us to the end of this meeting. Let me thank the chairperson of SANBI, together with this senior management led by the CEO. Same thing to the chairperson of SAWIS, led by his chairperson, and then the CEO and the other members of the senior management. We have come to the end of our meeting. We are going to reconvene tomorrow again after plenary. That's likely to be at 6. We'll be dealing with Sandparks, Ismangaliso. I think we'll just quickly give SANBI, to be fair to them. We'll start with them quickly, then allow the other entities to come. Thank you so much. Can you make sure at least by midday, Johnson, that document is shared so that the members, as and when they sit in plenary, they can browse it, so that if there are things that they want to raise with you, they will be able to raise with you.
We'll do so.
Yeah, just compare notes with the DG of the department. They've done it so nicely. Yeah, you can do that, but you know what needs to be done. Even the report is there. You just need to share it. Then let me thank you, colleagues, and then thank the colleagues, my fellow colleagues, and then the support team from the ministry, the support team from the communications side of Parliament. Let's call it a night till we meet again tomorrow. Good night. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.